So let's start implementing an asynchronous process. At the moment, we will not have any API calls, so we will mock the asynchronous process with the help of setTimeout. The functionality I am implementing is when the user is selected from this drop-down, it should update all the components with the user details after 2 seconds. At the moment, you can see that it immediately updates. And for this, we will have the flow somewhat like this. So at the moment we have this login handler and this dispatch is dispatching the object literal, but this object literal will immediately call the reducer and we don't want that. We need to have some time in between. So let's say for example inside the actions.js we are going to add a function validateUser, and inside this validateUser, like here in the API calls and validations place, I'm going to put the setTimeout. So that means this dispatch will look something like this. When this validateUser is called by this dispatch, it means it will process, it will wait for that, and then at the end we are going to dispatch it. Though there is another point missing in this, and that is the thunk middleware, but I'm coming to that in the next lecture. At the moment we try to configure this basic scenario. So let's do that. I'll go to actions.js and here I'm going to say export const validateUser login detail. Now I'm just putting a comment here that this is the place where we will have the API calls, but at the moment I'm just going to put setTimeout, and inside this I'm going to say dispatch, and I will have, let's say for example 2000 milliseconds. So the function which contains the API call, or basically an asynchronous process, is ready. Now let's go to login.js. Now I do not need this login import anymore. Instead I'll just say validateUser, which is going to be the function. Now here also I don't need this dispatch, and I'm going to add dispatch validateUser and the login detail we are going to pass. So now we have done first step of the configuration, but this is not sufficient. But I'm going to save this and I'm going to run to show what exactly is the problem with this code. So now let's run the code. As you can see that it says dispatch is not defined. Why is it so? The reason is, if you observe this particular figure, we have the dispatch in login.js because we have imported useDispatch and then we create the dispatch object. But here in actions.js, we do not have the dispatch object available. Certainly, you can pass the dispatch object from login.js inside the validateUser parameter, and that you can pass here in the validateUser. But that isn't the right way. The reason is you may have multiple functions and you just want that wherever you need to have the dispatch object, you want to make it available. Right now, the error is coming because the dispatch is unavailable in the actions file. So that's where we need a middleware, and Redux provides Redux thunk function which can resolve this problem. It will make the dispatch object available wherever you have actually dispatched the action. And that's what we are going to do in the next section. So here in this lecture, we just saw configuring the action creator and the function where we have the asynchronous process configured. There can be one relative question, and that is about action creator, though we have already discussed, but yes, this is an important point. Action creator is a pattern. You use it with the dispatch. Inside dispatch, instead of passing an object literal like this, you give a function which eventually returns the object literal only.